Vienna, Austria, Avalanche, and from Dresden in Germany, shooter Schulz. Together, they are blown up.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Blown Up, episode 54, the very first episode of Blown Up in the year of 2021. I'm your host, Robert Dreissker, aka Coach Dreissker, also formerly known as Avalanche. And with me today, nobody, because Felix Shooter Schulz, my dear colleague, isn't here with me today, but don't worry, he will be back in the future. We will have an update, a very short update for you in the future in German language. So don't worry, both of us are doing fine. He just couldn't find the time to be here with me today. But why am I here today on my own? The reason is pretty simple. I had the opportunity to have a great chat with my fellow colleague Tyson Dux. German wrestling fans may remember him back from a time when there were still shows when he was attending WXW 16 Carat Weekend as a part of Ambition and the events surrounding WXW 16 Carat. Or you may, of course, also know him from his time in WWE, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor. he this guy has basically been everywhere, and yeah, like I just said, I had the opportunity to have a really good chat with him, and I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did when we recorded this. Ladies and gentlemen, here's our talk with Tyson Dukes. Thanks again for making this happening so spontaneously. I'm kind of not used to people be like, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. I'm all up for it. Usually it like takes like, I don't know, weeks or at least days to set something up. I'm a very spontaneous guy myself, so I really appreciate and I'm really happy that you seem to be one as well.
Yeah, see, I think we cut from the same cloth, actually. So this is when you said, "Oh, I know this is spontaneous, but can we do this tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Why not? Because if you leave it a couple of days, I'll probably forget." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it worked out well.
Yeah, it's the same with me. Like I like to get things out of the way once I have an idea for something. Like I need to check that box as soon as possible. That's the way I approach things. When we started this conversation off air, we were just talking about you coming to Germany, basically, Germany and the UK for 16 Carat and for PCW, and those were your last shows that you had the chance to perform on, if I'm right.
Unfortunately and fortunately, so both. Fortunately, because I got to work for WXW and for PCW, and that's my first time ever being in Europe, working in Europe. Like I've mostly done North America and Japan, so it was awesome because it was like a bucket list thing for me. I've always wanted to go where like I love history of pro wrestling. I love old wrestling, so to be a part of both territories was awesome. Unfortunately, because that was it. As soon as I came home, I barely got a flight home. They were closing down airports and everything and borders at the time. I had no idea how bad it was. And then once I got home, that was it. I was stuck. Like we were just at home and that was it. No more wrestling, no more anything.
Yeah, I mean, I was scheduled to be on those PCW shows as well, and I had to kind of, what should I say? Like it was a tough decision. I mean, it didn't really make sense to fly out when you know there's a very good chance of not coming back, you know. And so I can kind of relate to you how it was for you to barely get back when this whole COVID thing started out. But you actually did a pretty, like what I can at least from my perspective, like you did a pretty good job in keeping yourself busy. Like you started, or I don't know if you started it, but you concentrated on creating content for YouTube. Like how did that came about, and like what like motivated you to do so? Like, can you tell us something about that?
It was so I did come home, and then I was home for a little bit, and I was working on my shop we have and turning it into like a personal workout space. And we wanted something that, you know, along the lines of like The Rock has, like the Iron Paradise. And then we had the notion that we would start running my school out of my garage.
So let me just jump in here. Like you can
Yes.
plug away. You don't have to hold back. We're talking about Hammerlock Imperial, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we wanted to start our business here, but then with COVID happening, we kind of shut it all down because nobody's coming out, and there was regulations, and then there's fines, and the thought of threats of fines. And I didn't want anybody getting like like fines, okay, but then other people, they would fine all the students and stuff. So we decided that me and my son just started putting out content. I have a real need to keep going and do this wrestling thing, and I've always been on the side of educating people with pro wrestling, that I decided to focus more on the studying part and the education part, and getting people to understand why we do things the way we do. Because I don't think it's different in Europe than it is over here in North America. A lot of guys have been pulled up with NXT and stuff like that. It's real big in the UK. I guess it is the same, right? Where they're pulling all the main talent. But then there are no veterans left. There's no veterans here. I'm 42 and I'm the vet out of all these kids. And like nobody has really taught these kids psychology or timing or how to structure a match together to make it more believable, emotional connection. And so we just started doing these things to make wrestling make sense, make wrestling content make sense. And then it just snowballed from there. And then it just became a thing where we just kept pumping and more out. It became more of a thing. And now we're on a bit of a roll now. It's snowballing. So we're just focusing more on that. And we've actually shut the school down. I've had to shut it down. Like I've had a few. And my whole thing is, it's not because of COVID that I shut down. It's because of the climate of attitudes in the business. And I've had some students in the business that are adults, but are acting like children. So I no longer want to babysit adults, if that makes any sense. And so I might as well push my content via YouTube, where I get the people that want to know, they can watch, right? So basically.
So even after COVID, you won't return as a coach besides your son, I guess? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically my doors. I do have a job as a head coach at another training facility, but that is it. I just go in there and I teach them how to do proper techniques and how to apply, and then I leave it at that. I no longer have to have so many members to pay the bills. I don't need to bring in people that I don't feel as though really should be in the business. I was never one to say that you shouldn't be a part of it, but I definitely believe that you need to work at a certain level to be in this business, as I'm sure you are. And so I'm free of all those headaches. And so I won't open an actual school. I will just personally take people on and just head coach at this other place. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on that topic already. I think what also like kind of plays into that. I mean, I myself, I've been doing this for like compared to you for only 12 years, but sometimes I feel like nowadays, like all the information and all the knowledge is out there, but people don't really care about like getting it. While I assume back in the day it was way harder to get all those information and knowledge from guys inside the business, and you were like craving to get it? Like, would you? I don't know. Would you
You
say
know,
that?
I find that our mindset, me and you, have a very the same parallel mindset because we come from a little bit of a different generation. My tenure in wrestling now is, as of August, will be 25 years. I've been at this for 25 years. So I find with the climate, when I start, I think if they understood where we came from, and they would appreciate more of an education and more, because I've never ever held back. I've never held my thoughts on wrestling and stuff like that, and not to seem like a know-it-all or seem like a bigwig, but my idea was to push education and make sure that you were the best that you definitely could be. Because like you said, like I come from the 90s. I started in the 90s. So when you wrestling in the 90s, there was still an element of kayfabe up until like my first year in the business, when Vince said, "Hey, this is just a show. This isn't real." So when I learned, they beat us up. They made sure that everybody knew how to hook and how to like take a guy and make sure that it was believable. And then when you first joined, they weren't going to show you how to that it was work. They were going to punch you in the face and, you know, bend you to the point where you're tapping out and you had water in your eyes. It's a different sport altogether now. And it's funny because I constantly wanted to learn. I lived at my school and I trained 5 days a week in pro wrestling. And then I trained on the Saturday and Sunday in more amateur and catch hook style wrestling drills, which were, so it was a never ending education and never ending learning both ways of how things are done, old school and new. So that's the part that sucks, is because now anybody in this business has an encyclopedia of data out there and knowledge, but they just want to see if they can go viral by putting a Hershey bar in their tights and saying that they pooped themselves or something disgusting or grotesque. It's no longer about the actual art of pro wrestling, unfortunately. A lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's exceptions, and it's not all like that. But I was on a podcast recently, like a German one, and I said I can't recall it like one by one, but I said something like, like kayfabe obviously is dead. I mean, you can't deny that, and I think, how should I say, like you make yourself look really stupid if you say like someone on the street that like this all we do is like 100% legit, because people
Mm-hmm.
just can take out their smartphone and tell you like, hey, you're bullshitting me, so
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of hard for me to express in English. So I personally think, yeah, kayfabe is dead, but it's a decision if we're gonna piss on the grave of it or not. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, I totally agree with that. I believe in the same philosophy. Is that I never wanted to look, and this is the way I always put it. I want people to question whether it's real or not. I wanted to have the element of like, could that be, are those guys really mad? Is that real right now? And I still wanted to be entertaining along those lines of entertainment, but still have a deception to it, where people like do not know if that was real or if that guy's really hurt or not. But I don't want to see people get hurt. I don't want to see people get like hooked for real, but I don't want to turn it into a high school talent show. Do you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
guys are like, that aren't into acting, aren't really athletic, aren't really, do you know what I mean? There's a real middle ground a gray line that should be taking. Like, you know what I mean? A good example of a guy that you would know that he was legit, but you never know. Or a couple of guys, so like Fit Finley and Minoru Suzuki. Those are two names right off the top of my head of like, it could be real. Like those guys
Yeah.
could hurt you really, really bad, but also like that there's still an element of entertainment where it looks like a more clean style fight or contest, combative contest. So it is it's hard right now in pro wrestling, because it's not, it's so spread out, and I would love to just narrow the gap between the entertainment side and the competitive athletic side, right? And that's
Yeah, I don't like. I think I used to say this to my students a lot. Like the great thing about wrestling is that you basically can make everything work if you just put the effort into it and making it work, instead of just, I don't know, like doing a joke because you feel like doing a joke when it doesn't fit in. You know what I mean? Like I think wrestling is, you like I just said, like you can make so many things work and make sense. But I feel like a lot of guys don't really put the effort into, maybe because they don't care, or maybe because they don't know how to do it, or whatever. Like, like if you have a, I don't know. I've so many spots like somewhere in my head that I want to do someday, but it's not like, hey, like I'm gonna be on that show next week, so I'm gonna do all the spots that I was just like thinking about because I feel like doing it. I don't know. Like I maybe it's the same with you. Like there's some stuff that I thought about like 4 years ago, and I still haven't done to this day because it's just not the time to do it. You know what I mean? Even if
yes.
it would get a reaction from a certain crowd or from certain fans, you know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I just feel like that's not the case overall, like especially on the independent scene. I feel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally right, because I feel as though it's the same way. Like independence, I think I don't think it's all the time. I don't think it's because it's lazy. I think it just becomes routine. Guys see stuff and it becomes routine, and they know that if they get a reaction from it, that's all they care about. And then that's the part that's because the same wrestling fans are going to go to the same wrestling shows. We're not drawing new customers. We're just going to the same group of people, right, that are into wrestling because they were always into wrestling. And so this same routine is always going to work. Because I said this the other day on another, I was talking to a guy, and where it's like, wrestling is very repetitive, like with the way they, like everybody works. And like, well, it's funny because the like, so like, the Mayor Fuji spot, the ghost spot, or the forearm exchanges, or the one guy hits the ropes, the other guy hits him with an elbow, and then he hits the ropes, and then that guy hits him with an elbow. It's a lot of the spots are super repetitive. There's no break in it. And it's funny that fans pride themselves on being smarter and more educated, but yet they don't see that every match that they're watching is exactly the same as the next one, with 8 false finishes. Like where like Jushin Liger got rolled up by Ultimo Dragon in like 30 seconds of a Super J Cup, rolled up with the Mahishar Cradle for 1, 2, 3, and it blew people's minds. People that didn't know Japanese wrestling knew over here in North America, this is before internet and stuff, they knew that some whiz kid with a mask on had pinned a legend, which was Jushin Liger, that was over in North America, and they couldn't believe it, that it took, like, it was only a 30-second or whatever match. And then they believed that there was heat involved and political backstage politics, and it really shook wrestling even without the mainstream internet, right? So this is that's wrestling. That's ripple effect is what's missing from wrestling now. Is they don't, like, I don't want to see every match have 15 false finishes that leads to a top rope false finish, which leads to a small package 1, 2, 3. I want to see something that is like completely unique. I do love Ambition for that. I love the WXW's Ambition tournament for that reason, because it's like out of nowhere, that's done, everything's done, and it's well put. It's well placed there. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be totally honest. Like, I wouldn't see myself in an Ambition match ever. I consider myself more of the classic professional wrestler, not like the catch as catch can, like ambition style wrestler. But it's nice to watch. Like I really like the concept of it, but I'm like honest enough to myself that I probably shouldn't be in there, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. I think ambition works on like it's definitely its own thing. It's different. It's got a different taste, a different vibe to it altogether. But I think done well. I think like any guy that's in pro wrestling that knows pro wrestling can do ambition. I think you would fare very well with ambition. I think that's one of the things that makes it so great, is because it looks rough, it looks gritty, and looks ugly and a little bit nasty, and that's the kind of stuff that I love that stands out. Like, you don't like the simplicity of ambition is probably what I love the most about it, because it's so simple. It's simple in contest. It's basically try to make it look as real and legit as possible. And I think it's refreshing. That's all. It's kind of refreshing to do. I know that you can't have a full show of this on mega cards like a Carrot show. You can't do a full ambition on a Carrot, but you can definitely have ambition as the prelim to it. You know what I mean? So it worked out. It works. I like it. I really do. I like the concept.
Yeah,
Pancreas, right?
Maybe I have to give it a shot in the future. was
I think
ambition...
you should. I think every wrestler should, because I think it adds a whole new element to your game that you never thought. Like, you know what I mean? It's like one of those things that I can try that. Is I think you would fare very well in that kind of contest. I think that would be solid. I think that's just me, though.
Well, as I said, like I might have to give it a shot in the future. Was ambition something that you like knew about, because it's been around a couple of years already? Like, was that something that you, I don't know, like saw online or whatever and felt like, hey, I really want to be a part of this one day? Or like,
Yes.
how did you get to know that there's something like WXW's ambition around?
See, and that's what that honestly was the first thing that I've ever seen from WXW, that where I heard about it, WXW in Germany, was the fact that they did have ambition, and that's what piqued my interest. And then then it led me down the rabbit hole of the Carrot and stuff like that. So, and all the workers and the guys that came before and all that. It was like, to me, those tournaments are a big deal, because it makes you like watch it a little bit closer. I'm like, how legit are these guys doing this? How legit are they going to keep with the rules and ambition? Because I love that about it, is the rules and the amount of authority a referee has. Authority, like our refs know, and they've been told many times, and I was there for meetings, like, if anything doesn't look on the up and up and they say something, we don't do it, it's done. The contest is done, and you've just either messed it up or made it. So you abide by the rules, and it's a different vibe when you make sure that you don't treat your referees like a joke. I can't stand it. I can't stand officials being treated poorly, or when it's poorly executed like that. It drives me nuts, especially in pro wrestling, because you give it away. The fact that if anybody there was thinking, is this a real contest? Once you start yelling at an official and he doesn't disqualify you, oh, okay, so it's not real. So that when I watched it for the first time, or found out about it, because I liked Pancrase, I loved how Pancrase was done, and now it's ambition. And then I know North America's kind of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport has kind of taken from the same lineage of ambition, which I love, is that it's ambition. Ambition came before Bloodsport, and then before ambition came Pancrase, and it just, those three elements are so nice that we can actually see a little bit of what wrestling used to be like, a little bit, because I read a lot of history, and I read a lot about the 1910, 20, all the Hackenschmidts versus the Gotches and stuff like that. And that stuff is beyond fascinating to see where we came from, as a whole, and where we're evolving to. But just knowing, like, Ed Lewis couldn't you couldn't beat him. Nobody on earth could beat that dude, and he was half blind and stuff. he could rip you apart, and then he could just go into any contest and either make money with the guy and say, okay, we'll work together, or he can go in there and say, today is not your day, son, and that would be it, you know.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love that stuff, man. I love the concept of that stuff.
So was there like any particular event, or can you like narrow it down, like in a time frame when this interest for like wrestling, how it was back in the day, like came from? Because I assume like a young guy starting out in 1997, that's not the mindset you have when you start out, I guess. You don't,
Right.
like when you start out, you don't care about, like, maybe you don't even know the Hackenschmidts, right? So
Right.
you're all about like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, I guess, at that point, or like.
I was okay, so I was kind of on the fence, because when I started, there was still an uncertainty about a farm kid going and leaving home and going provinces across and actually starting to wrestle. There was an air of reality to it still. So either by pushing me out because they didn't want people learning the secrets, or being a little bit more real than I thought it was. So maybe it was me being a little bit naive, or just me being very guarded to the fact that this could be real, especially on the prelims, on the lower levels. And then it's only when you get good and you get on to bigger companies do you ease off into fancy costumes and being money making, right? Whereas like Stu Hart would stretch the like sugar holds all day long and stretch the shit out of you, and all the stuff that's the horror stories of the dungeon. So my fear is that I would be not ready. So I actually did amateur wrestling. I understood amateur wrestling. I understood that pro wrestling is not real wrestling as Austin and The Rock did it, but there was still elements to it that I wasn't quite sure. So I made sure that I was ready. I didn't study the history of it. However, I was into boxing and all that stuff, and I love the John L. Sullivans and stuff like that, books about them. So as I got along and as the internet came to be, I would dabble more into understanding where I come from, because you don't understand, like, unless you understand where we were and where we come from. There's why are we here, basically, right? So I'm a big history buff. So it was once internet became a kind of a big deal, and I started my training and I understood, and I was allowed in the business, and I was making moves and starting to do shows. Then I started to read about it and stuff. But it's not only until this year, because I was so focused on my career, but being off for a year, that I've totally refocused again, and then started to reread old stories. I'm reading Thez's book right now called Hooker, and it's a tremendous read. Felix sent me the Billy Robinson book. That's my next one. So I'm going to read that too. And I guess because there's nothing out there right now, there's nothing for me to do, but I might as well study and see where we come from a little bit more, I guess, to have a refresher.
Yeah. So let me pick up on that topic a little bit. Like I wouldn't consider myself a heavy reader, or if that's the right term, I don't know. But I don't really read that much. But when I read books, it's wrestling books. So do you have like a recommendation? Like if I guess, or I assume there's a bunch of young guys from the German or European, like continental European scene listening to this. Like could you give those guys, but also fans of course, like a recommendation if they had to like read one wrestling book, which one would it be?
Well, the ones I would give them are the ones that, like, I can barely put it down. I said, like, before our interview today, I was like reading, I'm like waiting for the clock to hit so we could have our interview. So I just kept checking the messages, and I was reading Thes's book Hooker. It's like, it's hard to put down. It's really, really hard to put down for like just knowledge and history. And like, he's not only talking about himself, he's talking about wrestling, like wrestling the way it was and where it came from and where it's going. And he's always respecting even the guys nowadays. He never really takes a crap on anybody, which is awesome. That he's so an old guy like that would be so level-headed, right? Not be bitter or not be, wow, these kids today is great. It's fun. It's a good read. I'm halfway through, and it's hard to put down. It's one of those books. But for entertainment value, and the Jericho's first book is a hell of a read too. His book, it had me laughing out loud. So there's spots in there where he's talking about because it's Canadian wrestling. He got trained by the Hearts out west, and he talks about East Coast guys like Bulldog Bob Brown, which when I was a child, he was one of the meanest heels ever. And it's just fun. It's a fun book to read. Just for the humor and the way it's really well written. It's really well done.
Yeah. One book, I mean, great books, of course. Like one book I would yeah, like usually hand out to guys from the advanced class when they already have a couple of matches under their belt is the Rip Rogers book. I don't know if you've read that, but what I really like about that one is, like, I think it's perfect when you, like I said, like when you had your first couple of matches and then you read that book. Like to be quite honest, I think it's not very well written, but that's what makes it so great, because it, like, the book kind of like constantly yells at you what to do and what not to do. Like, so
Mhm.
I really like that aspect about the Rip Rogers book. So yeah, that's one of the go-tos I would hand out to students of the advanced class when they ask me. And it's an easy read. I think it's like 150 pages or something, so you can read it. You can read
You
it
know
in a
what's
week.
you can just like that read, or just follow the man on Twitter, because he's basically yelling at you via Twitter all day long. His messages are just in caps, all caps, yelling all the time, like, grab a hold. You know what I mean? That's the Rip style of wrestling. I love it.
Well, basically, the book reads exactly like his Twitter timeline. So
Perfect. That's perfect.
So I mean, that's actually another topic I wanted to talk to you about. Like, I got a feeling that we, like, the gap between, I would call them like the old school guys and the new school guy, if you want to call it like that, that the gap, especially, at least that's how I feel, because I got more time to be on the internet because there's nothing going on. I feel like the gap, just mindset wise, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I feel like we're getting to a point where we might not be able to fix it again. Would you say that like, the reason why I'm asking you, because I feel when I see your stuff, like, you point out things that, like, so-called old school guys would point out, but I feel like you do a good job in translating it to the guys from today and making them understand, like, oh yeah, this actually makes sense, even though it's something that's like comes from 50 years ago, or however long it may be. Like, would you say yeah, like, my observation is right, and maybe that's also a reason why you, like, want to kind of bring those two camps together again? Like, was that part of your idea to put out those videos and in the way you're doing them, or am I, like, totally off?
No, you're totally on, totally right. And some of those videos, you'll see a cranky old man, kind of leaning towards the old ways a bit and being a little bit. And then I've had my wife will say, you need to just relax, because if you start yelling at them, they're not going to take it. They're not going to digest it. They're not going to take it. They're going to be defensive, and they're going to not want to do it. And the only reason that I put it out there isn't to say that I'm right or that my way is better. All I want to do is make professional wrestling a much better entertainment field, like way better than, like, I know that you can't do stuff from 1920. You can't have a match like that and expect people to love it, but you can have elements of 1920s and then pull it to present day with crazy athleticism. Like, the kids are out of control awesome. Like 8-pack abs, wicked costumes, could flip off the top rope and do 3 somersaults and land on their feet like effortlessly. It's just trying to bridge that gap, which is, like, you're right, that gap is so monumentally big right now. And if I could get them to realize, or my focus is maybe a couple of them will realize that it's not reaction you're looking for, it's emotion. If you get emotion, then you'll have a classic match that will last a lifetime and people will talk about it. But if you're just going on reaction, they're going to forget about it. They're because reaction is like watching fireworks. I always say it's a good book versus fireworks. A good book will have you pulled into it and drawn into it, and you'll lose hours in it, but it's never going to make you go jump, or it's not going to make you stand up and do, like, scream real loud. It's going to pull you in. Whereas fireworks, you're going to go ooh and ah, but then, like, you can only do 5 minutes tops of watching the same flashes of light before you're bored and on to the next thing. Whereas a good book, you can read over and over again. It just takes a little bit of patience and a little bit more time to get into it. So if we can just kind of bridge that gap a little bit, and the work is, we got a lot of work to do, I'm telling you, because you're right. And we're just the bridge has to go, like, be so much bigger. But if we can get it there, if we can get some of these kids to realize, and they are, I do a lot of reviews now, and I see a lot of kids have those aha moments and those light bulb moments where I'm like, hey, if you did this, and you did your cool thing, but you did it after this, then now this makes it worthwhile, and this is the reasoning behind it. And so that's the plan. This has always been my plan, is to make wrestling a little bit more palatable for everybody, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad, like, I'm not alone with that observation. Like, to be quite honest, sometimes I feel a little bit, how should I say, awkward, because, like, I'm 32 years old. Like, I started training in 2009, and I've been around the business like with like crew work and all that since 2006-ish. And I feel like, hey, like I'm supposed to be like on team new generation, like full-heartedly, but I kind of feel like I'm right between those two chairs, and I hate, like, people going at each other for, I mean, don't want to say for no reason, but for reasons I personally do not understand. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm coming out, yeah, like, just from my age and the time, because, like I said, I'm 32 years old now. It's kind of weird that I feel like, hey, yeah, I mean, these old guys, I can see their point, but obviously I can also understand, like, the younger guys who are up on top now, like doing their thing. So I don't know, like, sometimes I feel like, hey, what, like, sometimes I would like to just, like, get off Twitter completely, because I know, like, once I hit that that icon, that I'm, like, gonna be soaked in, and some so and so is gonna shoot against so and back and forth, and everybody's just basically talking smack on each other, you know, like, I don't know, like, but I'm glad I'm not the only guy that got that feeling.
Yeah, well, there's no way of saying, like, there's no way that you cannot evolve. And the kids are right. There's no way that you can be at a 1920s mindset of wrestling. However, there are elements that you need to remember and remember where we came from. And there's reasons why things work to this day. Like, you don't have to reinvent a wheel when the wheel runs real smooth, right? So it's just like you said, it's about bridging a gap between them and just making it so the kids will, like the new ones, will digest it a little bit easier. And it's and you're totally right. And it's because kids are educated more and know how to do more and stuff new, but they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it because they know they're doing it just because they can do it, right? And like even with MMA being more of a prevalent thing and being like educating people, like you can't do just normal chin locks and expect people to believe, or you can't do cross arm breakers and stay like in New Japan back in Muda's day, that he would be in a cross arm breaker for like 3 minutes. That is unheard of. In like, you can't do that now. You need to get out of there. You need to get to the ropes, or otherwise. So that's what I say is the evolution of our business. Is you can have a little bit more of the cooler stuff off the ropes and stuff like that, but I think where the new gen would be better and better suited is if they look back in the past and they gravitate to a little bit more selling and structure and storyline and emotion, other than just doing the flip, because this is when I do my flip, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, what maybe kind of fits the topic here, like I was I was happy enough to spend a week pretty much 24/7 together with Dr. Tom Pritchard back in 2013, which was like a really eye-opening experience for me. And I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be the head coach of the WXW Academy if I wouldn't have met him. Like him and Walter were basically the guys who took care of me the most, I would say. I'm actually not sure if Dr. Tom is like fully aware of that, like how much impact he really had on me. But since you brought it up, like to study the past and stuff like that, like obviously, like he told me, how should I say, like when I felt like, hey, I really know a little bit how this is going, like he basically showed me like, hey, yeah, you have seen nothing yet. And he was totally right. I mean, and then there was stuff that I was able to pick up really quick, and then there was stuff that he brought up and I didn't understand at the point, like, and I've never really told this in particular before, but he's I mean, if you look at his past, that makes more than sense. But he's like, he brought up study guys like the Rock and Roll Express, for example, and that's what I did, because it's Dr. Tom Pritchard, it's the guy who trained The Rock, Kurt Angle, and all those guys, so he's got to know. And like and I got back to like matches of those guys that he would bring up every now and then, and like I'm I'm trying to say, like, I don't mean it disrespectful, but when I turned on a match of the Rock and Roll Express, I just saw like two middle-aged guys with a kind of mediocre double drop kick for the finish, and like I didn't get it. Like I kind of feel like, hey, like I had such a great training week with that guy. He gave me so much like knowledge, and like I felt really pumped. And then you turn on that match, and you feel like, is this a rip? Like I don't get it. And I was, how should I say, like but I wasn't really questioning it. You know what I mean? Like I just kept back, like watching those things, like not constantly, but every time I felt like, hey, I understood this and this a little bit better, and then I went back to watch that again, and like I still really couldn't feel it. And then I don't remember like the exact day or the exact year or whatever, but like then there was a day like I just turned on like a random Smoky Mountain where it was the Heavenly Bodies against the Rock and Roll Express. So you could say like it wasn't really the Rock and Roll Express in their prime,
Mhm.
because that was, I would say, somewhere in the 80s. I mean, you could argue that, but like, and I turned this thing on, and and then it was kind of like a huge door opened, and where I was able to like look past this like mediocre double drop kick, and I
Yes.
saw like the people going crazy and how they reacted to everything, everything and every single step and everything, a single move that they did, like, and how they controlled the crowd and how they were with them for the whole ride, and how it was the up and down. And I was feeling so stupid because I wasn't able to see it like for at least, I don't know, like 1.5 years or 2 years
Mhm.
in a row, while I was constantly coming back, because again, it's Dr. Tom Pritchard. He has to know. So I need to watch this, because obviously he trained pretty much half of the Hall of Fame. That's not the case, but you know what I mean, right? And
Yes.
then I felt like a complete idiot once like this door opened up, and I was like, "Woof!" That took a long time for me to understand that.
That's the way it goes, is like, we don't like, as entertainers, as a professional wrestlers, that took years and years, and the dudes on the road not even understanding why they were doing things the way they were doing. They were just told to do it by the vets that worked with them. So for you to know that, like, realize that without actually experiencing it in the ring, it just goes to show, like, it's just knowledge that comes with time. And that's what it's all about. The more educated you become, the more cynical I think you become too, right? Because when we start in wrestling, we always, as a young guy, you only think about the moves, and you only think about how good your body looks, and how because that's what is pushed on you, like, get in shape, look your best, look like a giant, make sure that everything you do is executed to perfection, because that's training, that's how you train. But then as you get along in the business, you realize that it's, oh, okay, that's not even you're not even turning the doorknob to the door, opening it up to the next room. You're basically just coming to the door. You just don't understand what's on the other side. Is like, sometimes you don't throw drop kicks at 100% efficiency, because you're 20 minutes into a contest where it's supposed to be a believable altercation between two men, and you're exhausted, and think that was a last ditch effort to throw that drop kick, and it's not as sharp, and it's not as high, and it's not as impactful, but it did the trick because that guy was just as worn out. And like, when you start learning that kind of stuff, it's just a whole another level of learning that's just, you just didn't even know before. And you know where I learned that? You learned that from Tom. I learned, and Walter, that was like the guys that I learned from in the beginning were Joey Legend. He did the technical stuff, and like the stuff like moves properly and bumps properly and stuff like that. And after that, it was Terry Taylor was that moment with me. Is like, Terry would just tell you just the way it was, and like, you would just, like, what are you like, why are you like harping on me? Well, I'm just trying to do the best I can. And I wrestled him for over a year, and I've never learned so much. And all I did was take an ass kick in every single show. And then he would just tell me when to come back. And I never understood why. And like, I never understood why I wasn't getting anything in, and I was frustrated sometimes. But like, really, the education that man gave me in that year of feuding with him in Canada was monumental to who I am now as a performer, like monumental. And then he knew like, Bret Hart's system is, Bret Hart after will come in, look calm, cool, collected, wrestle, and all of a sudden you'll see Bret's mouth hang open. And Steve Austin said it best, is like, Bret Hart is a machine, and you can't blow him up. He's impossible. He worked over 300 days a year all the time. Like, you can't blow him up. But it's not about like looking like you're fresh at the end of 20 minutes. It's to look like your bag in the bag. And that's hard to do. Especially when these kids work together so nicely and so easily because we work together so well. There is no resistance. So then, like, they're look at me, I'm in great shape. I can do leapfrogs at the end of a match. Well, yeah, you could. Like, I'm glad that your cardio is that good, but like, does it make any sense to do a leapfrog if you're battling a guy that's maybe 50 pounds, has 50 pounds on you, and he could beat you up, and like he beat you down, and now you're doing a leapfrog? Does that make any sense? You know what I mean? So
maybe he worked over your leg as well.
well, that's you know, I see that a lot. I see reviews. I see that a lot. I'm like, why did you sell that, or why would you do that after he just put the thumping on you? Obviously, you have iron legs. You know what I mean? So it's just getting past. It's just levels of learning, and that's the first level is always just get your body right, get your diet right, get your moves all lined up, and then your next level is the greatest lessons that ever lived. And then the next level leads to so many more that would, like, you'll never, like, we as professionals have been at this a very, very long time, combined years. We'll never know everything about it or how to really, really harness in. And that's the part that I love about wrestling, is that I've studied this for over half my life, and I will still not know all about it. And you know what I mean? Until my dying days, I'll still be learning something new, and it's great. That's the great part.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would also usually tell the guys when because like every now and then somebody would behave a little bit like they know exactly what they're doing while they're, well, maybe do not. Like, you never stop learning in wrestling. If there's guys like, I don't know, like Bret Hart or whoever it may be that have been around forever, and when they say like, I never stop learning about this business, and I guess you're not gonna be the first one who basically finishes like 100% of knowledge when it comes to wrestling. It just doesn't happen. One name you just brought up, and I've seen that when I looked up your like biography, basically, is Joey Legend, who is, I think you could say he's I mean he's living in Germany to this day, and I think like throughout the early 2000s, I would say, like from, I don't know, like 2003 or 4, like from that time period, he was probably the best or one of the best wrestlers in like located in Europe. Did you ever get the chance to wrestle him in Canada?
When I started, and that's the lame part. That's the part that because I was so early on in my career, and it was just, Joe was just basically pulling me along. It'd be great to have one more contest now that he's like where I'm at now. Do you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
like how I am now and how I see things now would be great to have a meeting of the minds, as it were, and see how we could get along wrestling wise. But like early on, it's one of those things where you could say it was a good match, but it was just Joe just having his match and just pulling this kid along to make him look okay. You know what I mean? It had no it didn't have it wouldn't have the same vibe now as it did then. You know, it would be way better now, I think, unless we clashed in styles. But I don't see that being an issue. But
yeah,
you never know.
I can totally see the point that you're bringing up. Like, I have pretty much the same feelings about my time in Japan. Like, I was basically, and I'm very grateful for the time I was lucky enough to learn from Daisuke Sekimoto for a couple of weeks in Japan, which also kind of course helped like in understanding the different aspects of pro wrestling a little bit better. But I was like given the chance of, like, I had a semi main event in Kurikan Hall when I was really not deserving it, and I really feel, how should I say it? Like, I really would like to do that in today's age, and not like 8 years ago, where I feel like looking back, I mean, somebody like felt like I was good enough to do that, or I deserved that spot. But like looking back, 8 years, it's like, man, like I wish I could go back now and do it, because I would have to I could bring so much more to the table and make it so much better than it was like 8 years ago. So yeah, I can totally relate to your point in this
I
case.
get that a lot. I do that a lot. I do a lot of reminiscing about that stuff now, and think about like working for WWE very early on, and being with them for basically 2 years, not under contract, but just working with them, and just going to Japan for the first time, even the first tour of Japan, just trying to do their style and trying to fit in with them instead of just being me. What they pulled me over. Why did they need another guy to work like their Japanese style when they're pulling over a guy from Canada to work his style, and I'm trying to do their style? That makes no sense. No sense. So I feel as though a lot of these things, and I feel you on that. I feel as though we get breaks early. And I think maybe nowadays that's the problem. Like now, and mean by nowadays, like even our generation of like 90s, early 2000s, all that stuff, we get things too early. And then it's not like we botch them. It's just we don't know. We don't know what we're into. We're over our heads. And they purposely put us over our heads, I think, sometimes. And it would just be nice to have a more gradual. I wish I was more patient. I wish I had studied a lot more back in the day. Those are things. I wish that some of these breaks didn't come as early as they did, and I would have to fight a little bit harder and grit my teeth and work way harder than I did, and understand more. And that's my big takeaway from my career is I wish things didn't come when they did. I wish like my tour of Europe came at the right time. If not a few years, maybe too late, maybe, you know what I mean? I feel as though that I was in the right mindset to be able to wrestle the way that I wrestle for both companies efficiently. Whereas before in Japan, the first tour of Japan was just, I wasn't like, I was trying to be them when I'm not me. So mentally, that's not right. You're not ready. And WWE was the same way. And Impact was the same way. The only one that I had a real good fit with at the right time was ROH, was probably my best, because they were looking for young athletic guys just to go and just be hard, right? Be hard dudes. And that's probably the best suited I was ROH. Time wise, and that was it. But the rest of them came a little too early.
Well, a little bit too early, but I mean, like looking back at your CV, there's not many guys I would say that really, can say from themselves that they were pretty much part of every major company out there.
Mm-hmm. The only one I really missed on was WCW, and I was in talks with WCW to go down and is during the AJ Styles and Air Paris and all that stuff. I was actually going to be a part of that and do dark matches with WCW, and then I was told to hold on. And when they told me to hold on, it was because WWE had bought the company. Basically, I almost made it to WCW too, which would have been great. Would have been a great thing to do. Right? Would have been all of them.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, WCW was my favorite promotion growing up as a kid. So
me too, because of Benoit. Benoit was my guy. It was Malenko and Benoit, and I love that style, right? I like grappling, I like real wrestling and stuff like that. And they're like legit dudes. And so I was just like, oh, like those were my guys back in the day. So WCW.
I was a total WCW mark.
Yeah.
Gotta be honest, Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump was my absolute hero. But I was I was young, and I don't know, like watching back some of his late 2000 stuff, it's still great. Like him beating up the Young Dragons all on his own. Yep. I still love it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still in love with it. Well, before we close or before we wrap this thing up, I would like to ask you, we've got the blown up community playlist on Spotify where our guests, yeah, if they want to, they can put a track on the list. So I would like to ask you, is there any particular song you would like to put on our playlist?
Oh
Does
my
anything come to
God.
mind?
Yeah, you know what? You guys are probably going to laugh at this one, but I've been doing I've been into a lot of rap lately, and like I come from country roots and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, all I've been listening to, because I train people at my house at like personal training, and there's been a few people, including my wife, who's into basically gangster rap. So I've been totally into it as of late, and I just can't get enough. So I would say right now, as it is, I would say Jay-Z, Hard Knock Life is probably right up there as right now my favorite one to bust out and just do some cardio to, and just listen to. I know this is ridiculous, but that's what it is. That's what it is. So I'm not going to even lie to you.
Hey, who am I to judge? I mean, well, JC is the song we're gonna put on the Spotify playlist. Tyson, I thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed this talk. Thanks for coming on the show. If you want to plug your apparel store or your people can actually send you matches to look at and get feedback. If you want to plug this right here, this would be the time to do so.
So all my stuff is real easy. It's all Tyson Dux. Dux is the spelling of the last name. If you find me on Twitter, my messages are open. So if you have matches, we can discuss. I can review all your matches. Clothing line is Hammerlock Apparel. It is also on everything. So my Instagram, my Twitter, you can find the website nice and easy. I try to keep it all linked together so everything moves a little bit smoother and nicer. So that's basically it. If you find Tyson Dux, you'll find anything that you want when it comes to pro wrestling content or wrestling aware. That's basically it.
Don't miss out on it, guys. He puts out really great content. Tyson, thank you again for the great talk.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.